Morning everybody, welcome back to Rustic Farm. I'm Paul and we live on a small farm in Western Australia. In one of my previous videos you would have seen that we were ripping up at the start of seeding. Now we're going to continue with our seeding, top dress our grain out and run over the top of it with our air seeder bar. We like to seed this way as our grain's not clean enough to go through the air seeder bar to stop blockages, and also our air seeder bar needs some work so the air system actually works correctly. So this morning I'm just setting up. You might notice that I've got my light on. I already started getting things ready this morning when it was still dark, so a headlamp is something that is probably a vital tool when working on a farm or in a homestead, so at least you can see when it's still dark and you've got your hands free. So yes, now I've already hooked up the auger onto the quad bike, so now we'll take it to the silo, set it up and start filling up the top dresser, ready to top dress the grain on. Our silo that we're getting grain out of today is actually across the road, so always advisable to park your equipment on the opposite side of the road to where you're travelling, so at least you can have everything off the road. So if a car or truck or something comes down the road, it's not going to clean up your equipment. So yeah, we try and use a lot of cocky gates on the farm. They're relatively easy to make. You can make them to any size and they work quite effectively. We'll be using the actual boot for the auger today because we're actually going to use the bagging chute to allow the grain to come out of the actual silo. The fog set in pretty bad this morning. Can't actually see that far ahead of us, so it's going to be a little bit difficult when top dressing out to see the grain, how far it's throwing and where we've actually previously driven. Hopefully the fog will lift before we have to go around the paddock too often, because yeah, we want to make it as easy as possible so we don't miss anything. So now we can go and put this boot back on and set it up and put the tractor and top dresser underneath, so start actually putting some grain in. We haven't used this top dresser this year yet, so I'll actually have to get the grease gun out, grease up all the grease nipples, and set it up ready to actually use it. This top dresser runs off a ground drive, so when we're actually driving around the paddock, this has to be engaged, which tightens this belt near the wheel, so as the wheel actually turns, it spins this pulley, which in turn rotates this chain over this side and rotates the chain at the back, which spins these chains that run down the centre of the actual top dresser. Just on the side here is our adjustment for how much grain actually comes out or how much fertiliser comes out. So I've got that completely open. I want to spread it at its full capacity so we can get as much grain onto the ground as possible, and take as little time to actually do it as well. So we've just got a couple of standard bolts that hold this boot on. What I've done previously is drilled a couple of holes in the bolts to I can actually put a bit of wire through just to stop them undoing completely and falling off. This auger jumps around a little bit. The actual bottom of the auger is actually bent, and that's why the bottom of the boot is actually elongated. You might see just on the bottom of the boot how this is all elongated. So this actually sits on the shaft, and this shaft is actually bent sideways, and that's why that's elongated. Doesn't run true, but it still does the job. You can see how the wire just goes through the hole. This stops the actual nut from undoing and the bolt completely falling off. I always like to set the bagging chute up so it goes in about the middle of the auger, so when the grain actually comes out of this chute it should fall into here, which is going to make it easier to actually load the top dresser, and faster as well. So like any piece of equipment, if you haven't actually used it for a bit of time, or even as a daily use, you should always check it over. Sometimes we'll get a bit slack on that, but it's always a good idea just to check everything. We're going to be using this quite a lot, so I'm going to fill it up with petrol, check all the oils, make sure that's all good, and then put the top dresser underneath. The auger is still quite high, so I'll see how much wind we have today, otherwise I'm going to have to put a chute on to direct the grain down lower, so it doesn't actually miss the top dresser and go on the ground. So the auger is slightly higher than what it needs to be. I'm not sure if you can see it properly, but there's a bit of an A-frame going up to a rail, and that rail's got about 20 mil where it can actually, the A-frame can actually come down. So it's held up there by this winch, so it's just a manual winch, so I'm going to lower that so I can get that auger just slightly down that little bit. So the A-frame's actually to the end of the rail now, so this is as low as this auger can actually go. I had already checked the oil on that tractor previously this morning before I hooked up the top dresser. It looked low, but it wasn't on level ground. So I've moved it to ground which is a little bit more level, but it's still down, so we're going to go and grab the engine oil and top it up so we don't have to worry about it. This tractor's a little bit different. It actually uses a hand throttle here to actually stop the tractor and start it. So unfortunately this is a tractor that you pretty much have start at high idle, and then as I was saying in one of my other videos, you don't actually want to have machines running at high idle when they're cold. But unfortunately this one, to actually start it, you need to have the throttle forward to actually crank it over and for it to actually fire up. And then when I want to stop it, I take this hand throttle all the way back to around here somewhere, and the engine will actually stop. This is the PDO shaft for the actual top dresser. It goes onto this shaft here and onto the actual PDO of the tractor. I haven't fitted it yet, as I still need to grease up the top dresser, and it's easier to get to a couple of the grease nipples with the PDO shaft not actually connected. The auger's roughly around centre of the top dresser. This auger uses a belt system to actually spin it, but it also loosens the belt, so the belts are tight and we can loosen them off to make it easier to start the stationary engine.
have noticed that I was using the rag to clean the grease points before actually greasing. This is to try and stop any contaminants going into the grease points and blocking the grease points from actually working.
Also, when greasing the machine, it gives you a chance to actually give it a good check over. I probably should have greased these ones before I actually put grain in, but because it's actually got weight on the chains, which makes it, oh no, this one's actually spinning okay. There's a grease point right in the middle. This one I didn't think wanted to spin, but it is actually spinning now. So I'll clean those grease points up and grease them up. Got a bearing just underneath or behind that pulley there. But as I've walked around the machine, I've noticed that I've got a spring bolt missing. So I'm going to have to jack this machine up and find another bolt to actually put through there. Because I don't want to lose an axle while I'm actually driving this around the paddock. And yeah, I've got a couple more grease points here, and knowing this machine, I know that I've got at least a couple inside underneath the machine that I'm going to have to jump under and do. I brought the truck over because I've got the air compressor on. I've got to check the tyre pressures in the tractor tyres as well as the top dresser tyres. As you'll see, this tyre's got a lot of cracks on the outside, but we've put in the correct amount of air pressure in. I'll be able to get those tyres to last a bit longer. Still got a fair bit of tread on the tyres, but these tyres are original, so they're close on 30 years old now. I'm pretty lucky because where I'm repairing this isn't too far from my sheds. I could have driven it back, but I decided to just fix it out in the paddock. One reason why I say it's lucky is because if I forgot to grab something, I can always just quickly go back to the sheds, grab what I need, and then come back and repair. So I actually thought about this job before I left the sheds. Made myself a bit of a checklist on all the stuff that I'm going to need, and then yeah, made the checklist on the app Notion, and then grabbed everything, double checked that I had everything before I headed over here. There's might be some stuff that I forgot to grab or didn't think I needed at the time, but at least if I've already brought majority of the equipment or the tooling that I need, makes my time more effective, and I should actually be able to get this fixed a lot quicker and get back to work. So I've jacked up the rear of the top dresser because the front of it is still connected to the drawbar, so this way the wheels stay on the ground but the actual chassis of the top dresser is lifted. The bolt isn't quite lined up, but it's a lot closer than it was, so now I can measure up, see what size bolt I need, and try and get the correct bolt. So we're about 17mm. I've brought over the Imperial set of bolts that I have, so that will be about 5/8, but it needs to be about 4.5 inches long to actually go through. Don't know if I'll have something quite long enough. Just got these bolts from an actual bolt shop. It's just a heap of different sizes. It's great to have on a farm for cases like this, and by just looking at all the sizes on the front, I should actually have one which is just 4 inches, so I'll try that one. It's probably not quite long enough, but it's worth a try to get me out of trouble for now. The bolt's not long enough. It's not actually going to go far enough through, so I'll have to go back and see if I can find another bolt to put into this. that's bent around. It's not actually going to come out. Probably go and grab the saw to actually cut this off, so then I know it's not going to get jammed up on anything. And until I can get a bolt that will allow me to actually use the top dresser today. So this is just a Ryobi, 3 bars on the battery, so that's fine. But I can't remember what I was cutting last, so I'm going to just check my saw blade. 18 threads per inch, so nice fine blade, so that will cut through that bar no problems.